the left and the media have been having another panic attack lately over this.
What did President Trump, what he did today is straight out of a dictator's playbook.
Donald Trump is a would-be dictator, and he has been for 7 years.
Trump's goal, like a dictator, was to stay in power.
He continues to behave more like a dictator than the leader of a democracy.
Trump wanted to be just like Putin, wanted to be a dictator.
Donald Trump believes that he should be the ruler, the dictator of the United States of America.
I absolutely believe that Trump is a fascist, and I believe his actions thus far are indicative of what a fascist does.
Trump's openly fascistic vision of politics and power.
Yes, they've been emboldened by Donald Trump. They know he has neo-fascist sensibilities.
Trump believes in the United States of Trump. He's a fascist.
Current and former defense officials are telling CNN that Trump's actions are that of a dictator.
John, Donald Trump is a dictator. He's a king. He literally is the greatest threat to this country right now.
Wow. Now, let me just start with this. Whenever the left accuses the right of something, it is almost guaranteed that they're doing that very thing. So who is actually acting like a dictator right now? Well, this guy, believe it or not. Democracy's at stake. And since he's the only one, apparently, that can preserve democracy, you got to give him a ton of leeway. Joe Biden has been governing somehow or another. He's found the Oval Office and found his way out again. I mean, remember, it's a round room. Anyway, he's been governing since day one as a dictator, believe it or not. Don't take my word for it. Take the New York Times. This is what they said after Biden's first week in office when he signed a buttload of executive orders. You know, when it must be bad when, the New York Times editorial board suggests that, quote, legislating through Congress is a better path. Is it? It's also the constitutional path. Now, let's be clear. This is not a South American-style dictatorship where political enemies are rounded up and executed. This is a nice progressive-style dictatorship where opponents are just monitored or censored online or get a knock on the door from the IRS agent. But wait. I thought Biden was incredibly senile. Yes, a dictator and almost completely senile. Both can be true thanks to one thing that this now country has going for it: a progressive administrative state. You see, the progressives have never wanted the bloodshed. They've never wanted the blood in the streets or anything like that. They just wanted a well-oiled machine. And Biden is just the tip of the spear. He's the figurehead or the hood ornament. He's just reading the teleprompter lines that he's fed, well, on a good day. It's the radical left-wing activists that are in charge. It is the Woodrow Wilson progressive dictatorship model. See, when they first came up with this fascism and dictatorships and communism, they didn't kill people yet. And so when Wilson was in, he was like, this is great. We can do everything by science. Follow the science. And we'll have administrators administrate everything. Well, Wilson, he and his band of merry progressive radicals took Wilson's model to the next level. FDR did with the New Deal controls. Wilson and FDR pulled off both of their dictatorships during wartime. Later, LBJ tried to do it by declaring his own war on poverty. It's an ideal progressive dictatorship. You have to control Congress to rubber stamp your ideas in a republic. In Biden's case, now we don't need to do that. You don't need to pass legislation since he has vast executive wing of the federal government under his power, built by Wilson, FDR, LBJ, Clinton, and Obama. I'm going to give you a rundown of 10 ways here in the next just couple of minutes that Biden has acted as a dictator, and we're not hitting all of them. Dictator move number 1, the eviction moratorium, which simply ignored property rights and placed undue financial hardships on small businesses. Ultimately, the Supreme Court correctly struck it down. Next, Biden's unconstitutional vaccine mandates in September 2021. In his announcement, he said, quote, "This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated." And later, quote, "We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin," end quote. Does he work for you or do you work for him? His executive order required vaccines for all federal workers and federal contractors, all healthcare workers, the military, and all employers with 100 or more employees. Again, the Supreme Court struck most of this down, as they should have. Dictator move number 3, student loan cancellation. Now, I bet you didn't know that the president can't just wave his magic wand and make loan debt disappear. Well, technically he can't. But that hasn't stopped President Joe Biden over and over and over again. Last summer, yet again, the Supreme Court shut down this plan as completely unconstitutional. But in true dictator style, Biden treats Supreme Court decisions as roadblocks to drive around. Just a few weeks ago, he again canceled another $5 billion in student loan debt. This brings his grand cancellation to $136 billion. He cannot do that constitutionally, but it doesn't matter. Next, do you remember Joe Biden's Disinformation Governance Board? In 2022, he named Lena Jankowicz as the first censorship czar. She sounded perfect for the role. After all, she had called the Hunter Biden laptop story nothing more than, quote, a Trump campaign product. When the Disinformation Board was later shelved, the Washington Post blamed it on right-wing attacks. To keep their power, dictatorships must try to control the spread of any idea that they find threatening. So, dictator move number 5, destroying American energy. During his first week in office, Biden canceled the Keystone XL pipeline. He did it with a stroke of a pen. He stopped new oil and gas, natural gas leasing on public lands and offshore, even though a court ordered him to resume the lease sales as required by law. Did it stop him? No. Then he drained our strategic petroleum reserve to its lowest level since 1984. An interesting year, isn't it? Then, because of societal dictators they all have to stick together, he then reduced sanctions on Venezuela, allowing them to resume pumping oil there and exporting 19% of it back to us. Next is Biden's enormous land grab, quote unquote, protecting 1.5 million acres of public land so far as part of his 30 by 30 plan. He wants to protect at least 30% of our land and waters by 2030. By the way, this isn't his idea. This is the UN and, the WEF. The Center for American Progress came up with the 30 by 30 program in 2019 in a report titled, How Much Nature Should America Keep? John Podesta, the guy who started the Center for American Progress, is now replacing John Kerry as Biden's climate czar. However, Podesta will officially just be a coordinator in the position. That way, he doesn't have to face confirmation by the U.S. Senate. He also doesn't have to answer questions about John Kerry, who refused to hand over simple information like who's on your staff, his expenses as climate czar, and what they actually did and worked on. It's a great way to keep your radical climate agenda hidden from those who have oversight. This is how you run a modern progressive dictatorship. You erase the lines between left-wing dark money, think tanks, and the executive branch. You sidestep the Constitution and avoid Congress by working through government agencies to accomplish whatever it is the activists want. Dictator move number 7. The letter from the National School Board Association in 2021 asking President Biden for help and urging that parental threats be classified as domestic terrorism. But oops, turns out the NSBA coordinated with the White House and the DOJ on the letter. Attorney General Merrick Garland testified before Congress that the DOJ was not using counterterrorism tools to target parents. But then whistleblowers later said the DOJ and the FBI were investigating parents all across the country with a threat tag created by the FBI's counterterrorism division. Next, targeting pro-life demonstrators, not pro-abortion attackers. Here's Mike Lee questioning Attorney General Garland about this just last year.
In 2022 and for the first couple of months of 2023, DOJ has announced charges against 34 individuals for blocking access to or vandalizing abortion clinics. And there have been over 81 reported attacks on pregnancy centers, 130 attacks on Catholic churches since the leak of the Dobbs decision, and only 2 individuals have been charged. So how do you explain this disparity?
That is generally because those actions are taken with photography at the time, during the daylight, and seeing the person who did it is quite easy. Those who are attacking the pregnancy resources centers, which is a horrid thing to do, are doing this at night in the dark. These people who are doing this are clever and are doing it in secret.
Wow. And doggone it, we just can't find these ninjas who do their work in secret. Can't do it. Can't. Dictator move number 9. Trashing the First Amendment by working with big tech platforms to censor speech on topics including COVID origins, masks, vaccine, lockdowns, the Hunter Biden laptop, climate change, mail-in voting, and election integrity. The censorship happened even when the social media companies knew the suppressed information was true. Last year, federal district court Judge Terry Doughty called this case, quote, the most massive attack on the free speech in American history. Even after the injunction, the Biden White House is pressing on with their legal challenge, claiming that it is their right to free speech that is being violated. The case is heading to the Supreme Court later this year. But no matter what they rule, will it matter to this administration? In the meantime, we continue learning more about Biden's censorship efforts, including the revelation last week by Congressman Jim Jordan that the White House pressured Amazon to censor books. This is digital book burning. Amazon caved and triggered a do not promote policy for books that were critical of COVID-19 procedures and vaccines. Finally, dictator move number 10, forcing transgenderism on the nation's schools. During Biden's very first week in office, he signed an order declaring support for boys participating as girls in girls' sports. Then in 2022, he signed an executive order expanding access to sex change treatments for kids. And recent rule changes to Title IX will force school employees to report any improper use of a transgender person's preferred pronouns to the Title IX coordinator for that campus. More policing of speech. Totally constitutional. Biden has been president now for 3 years. He's done a lot. I mean, I didn't even mention trying to throw the guy who's running against you in jail. That is the number one sign of a dictatorship and a banana republic. But he's been in office now, and he has issued 131 executive orders so far. That's a little less than average of 1 per week. During his first year in office alone, he issued 77 orders. That's double the amount Obama's first year and 40% more than Trump's first year. I don't like them no matter who is issuing them. These are dictator moves, abusing executive power, skipping past Congress, ignoring the Constitution, trampling on individual liberties, targeting political opponents. This is Joe Biden's presidency. This is how he delivers on his inaugural address promise to, quote, restore the soul and secure the future of America? Really?